Happy April 2nd, which happens to be the birthday of Frater Achad. Frater Achad. Or Charles Stanfield Jones. Now, before, he would have been, I think, 140 today, had he lived. Anyway, I'm showing you a tree of life here because I want to show you something. Now, sort of ignore the colors of the paths here on this particular tree, but the top three sephora here, that's called the supernal triad. And in actuality, that is the only, that's the only thing, that's reality. That's the supreme consciousness. That's the singularity thinking about itself. And everything below that is, if the top three is the ideal, then this is the actual as we actually see it. But everything below that is, in a profoundest sense, illusionary. But anyway, so that's the only real thing right here. And these are, number one is the only real awake consciousness of the singularity, of which we are the reflection way down here, okay? But anyway, this area above this area here, the supernal triad, the rest of the tree. Now, we raise our consciousness step by step. We awake from this dream into a lesser dream, into a lesser dream, into a lesser dream. But the area between here, number 4, and number 3 is an area called the abyss. And it's literally a looking glass. It's through the looking glass from the actual into the ideal. And the big crisis point in Hermetic initiation, anyway, is to raise, figuring out how to raise your conscious identity from number 4, which is pretty damn high, to number 3, which is just the opening act of the supernal triad. And this area here is called the abyss. That's the looking glass area. Now there's another sephira inside the abyss itself, and it's called Da'ath, D-A-A-T-H. And it is called, in English, it's knowledge. So they each have little names here, like this is wisdom, number 2 is wisdom, and number 3 is understanding. But this is knowledge. And in order to cross the abyss, the area right in the abyss is the height of where your meat brain can reason through things. So obviously the big initiation would be even overcoming the mechanics of the meat brain. Okay, and so very often people think that they have made the leap across the abyss and attained the consciousness of number 3. But perhaps they haven't, and they've convinced themselves they have. And so that's where a great deal of occult madness that we hear so much about and read each day on Facebook postings. But anyway, in honor of Frater Achad's, I just wanted to give you that background confusion there. because QBL by Frater Achad was truly one of the very, very first books in this genre that I read as a fledgling chicken Kabbalist way back when I was 27, 28 years old. And it really impressed me a lot. And many, many years later, it was my great honor to be asked to write the introduction to a new edition of it from my good friends at Weiser. And I'm going to share that with you today in honor of Frater Achad's birthday. I, Lon Milo DuQuette, a member of the body of God, hereby bind myself on behalf of the whole universe, even as I am now physically bound unto the cross of suffering, that I will lead a spiritual life as a devoted servant of the order, that I will love all things, that I will experience all things and endure all things, that I will continue in the knowledge and conversation of my holy guardian angel, that I will work without attachment, that I will work in truth, that I will rely ultimately upon myself, that I shall realize my true will, that I will interpret every phenomenon as a particular dealing of God with my soul. And if I fail therein, may my pyramid be profaned and the eye closed to me. That declaration is known as the Oath of the Abyss. Whosoever utters it with full magical intention invokes a terrible curse upon themselves, for they are either hopelessly deluded and committing an act of supreme spiritual presumption, or they have balanced and perfected all aspects of what most of us consider to be the self, and are now prepared to take the last irrevocable step toward becoming more than human. In both cases, the world will presume they have gone mad. On the summer solstice of 1916, Charles Robert John Stanfield Jones, Frater Achad, an accountant from Vancouver and an AA neophyte, 1 = 10, formally took the Oath of the Abyss, thereby laying claim, in accordance with the traditions of that august fraternity, laying claim to the initiatory title Master of the Temple, 8 = 3. So that would be right there. See, it's the third Sephirah coming down, but it's the eighth Sephirah coming up, 8 = 3. Jones dutifully reported this event in a telegram to Aleister Crowley, his superior in the order, who 9 months earlier in September had labored in vain, he thought, to beget a child with his scarlet woman, Jean Robert Foster. Crowley was amazed by the circumstances of Jones's initiation and the timing of the event. He wrote in his confession, "Every cause must produce its proper effect, so that, in this case, the son whom I willed to beget came to birth on a plane other than the material. What I had really done was therefore to beget a magical son. So precisely 9 months after that, as the summer solstice of 1916, Frater OIV, that's the motto of Charles Jones, as probationer. That was his probationer motto. Entirely without my knowledge, became the babe of the abyss. I'll read that more smoothly. What I had really done was therefore to beget a magical son. So precisely 9 months afterwards, that is at the summer solstice of 1916, Frater OIV, entirely without my knowledge, became a babe of the abyss. Jones's apparent success also represented in Crowley's mind a stunning validation of the AA system of magical attainment. The proud father gushed. I could only conclude that his success was almost wholly due to the excellence of the system which I had given to the world. In short, it was the justification of my whole life, the unique and supreme reward of my immeasurable toils. Crowley's confidence in Achad was further bolstered by a string of discoveries Jones would soon make, vital Kabbalistic keys that unlocked the fundamental mysteries of the Book of the Law and the Aeon of Horus. Some of these were outlined in a short, posthumously published book, Liber 31, which Jones sent to Crowley in 1919. Crowley couldn't have been happier with the revelations. Quote, "Your key opens the palace," unquote. It seemed in Achad, Crowley truly had found, quote, "the one," unquote, foretold in the Book of the Law. The one to follow thee. The one who shall discover the key to it all, or the key of it all. The magical child and brilliant heir apparent to the great beast and prophet of the Aeon of Horus. Perhaps he had. But the father-son relationship these two great adepts shared would not endure to the end. Eventually it would become strained to the breaking point. And amazingly, we know exactly the day this beautiful relationship began to sour. We have a written record of the precise moment, the moment Frater Achad either experienced a quantum leap in consciousness or stepped off the zenith edge of supernal adeptship into the abyss of occult madness. It happened on May 31st, 1922. Jones was writing the 4th chapter of QBL, or The Bride's Reception, a moment that would literally turn the Kabbalistic universe upside down. And here I quote, "I had written thus far, May 31st, 1922, when I was rewarded with the opening of secrets so wonderful that they have changed my whole conception of the plan of the Kabbalah, and have indeed proved not only a lightning flash to destroy the house of God, but a serpent of wisdom to reconstruct it, and yet again a star which explained all the symbolism. This matter is of such transcendent importance that I will deal with in the form of appendices to this volume, which will be obtainable under certain special conditions. Meanwhile, the main plan of this book will be followed as originally intended. since it is necessary that the student should have a clear and comprehensive grasp of the old system before he can appreciate the new. And that's why this book is still an incredibly valuable text, because it really does explain, at least in Achad's mind, the old system too. Fortunately for us, Jones did indeed follow the original plan of the text to completion and saved elucidations on his revolutionary theories for the book's appendices. This thoughtful gesture, in my opinion, renders the main text of QBL the clearest, most understandable, and practical introduction to the study of Kabbalah written to date. Well, obviously, this was before the Chicken Kabbalah of Rabbi Ben Clifford was revealed to the world. But I facetiously digress. It also effectively prepares the more Kabbalistically educated reader for the provocative ideas presented in the appendices, concepts that suggest that the traditional allocation of the letters of the Hebrew alphabet upon the 22 paths of the Tree of Life should, in essence, be reversed in their positions. Such a suggestion isn't necessarily heretical, especially when posited from the point of view of a master of the temple, 8=3, an adept whose consciousness abides above the abyss that separates the supernal triad of the Tree of Life, Kether Hokmah Binah, an abyss below which division is the result of contradiction, and above which contradiction is unity. Crowley, however, was not impressed with what he considered to be Achad's flawed and immature grasp of this rule of contraries. He would later write, "Bless you, dear. It is pollen season in Sacramento, and we're sneezing. But this rule must be applied with," here's Crowley's quote, "but this rule must be applied with skill and discretion if error is to be avoided. It is a lamentable fact that a worthy zealoter of the AA, one Frater Achad, having been taught patiently enough by the seer to use this formula, was lured to his vanity, or lured by his vanity, to suppose that he had discovered it himself and proceeded to apply it indiscriminately. He tried to stand the serpent of wisdom on its head and argued that he was a 1=10 of the order. He must equally be a 10=1. As the Book of Lies says, "I wrenched a dog backwards to find God. Now God barks." He would have been better advised to reverse his adored one. Now, Frater Achad means one, so O-N-E. He would have been better advised to reverse his adored one and taken a dose of Eno, one spelled backwards, and Eno was a laxative. A year later, in 1923, upon receipt of Achad's next book, The Egyptian Revival, Crowley voiced in his diary his exasperation with the direction his son was taking. Quote, "What line shall I take with regard to Frater Achad's books? I've just received The Egyptian Revival and threat of others. The point is this: the books, even apart from the absurd new attribution proposed for the paths, are so hopefully bad in almost every way, English style, sense, point of view, oh, everything. Yet they may do good to people they are written for. My real concern is lest he get too much hubris, and he spelled it hubris like a Cockney accent, too much hubris, and become a real cropper. Unquote. His fears become, at least in Crowley's mind, a reality. He wrote in Magic and Theory and Practice. One who ought to have known better tried to improve the tree of life by turning the serpent of wisdom upside down. Yet he could not even make his scheme symmetrical. His little remaining good sense revolted at the supreme atrocities. Yet he succeeded in reducing the whole magical alphabet to nonsense and shewing that he had never understood its real meaning. The absurdity of any such disturbance of the arrangement of the paths is evident to any sober student from such examples as the following. Binah, the supernal understanding, is connected with Tifereth, the human consciousness, by Zion, Gemini, the oracles of the gods, or intuition. That is, the attribution represents a psychological fact. To replace it by the devil is either humor or plain idiocy. Again, the card Fortitude, Leo, balances majesty and mercy with strength and severity. What sense is there in putting Death, the Scorpion, in its stead? There are 20 other mistakes in the newfound wonderful illuminated from on high attribution. The student can therefore be sure of 21 more laughs if he cares to study it. Tell us how you really feel, Mr. Crowley. Of course, it can be argued that Crowley was simply jealous of Achad's discoveries, the speed of his initiatory advancement, and his independent spirit. After all, Crowley could be viciously cruel and petty. It must be pointed out, however, that no matter how bitterly he railed against Jones' new doctrines, he always acknowledged and praised his role as the discoverer of the Kabbalistic key to Liber Alvel Legis, or the Book of the Law. The fact remains that Jones's behavior as the years progressed led many to believe that he had suffered bouts of mental illness. Such things are hard to prove, especially where magicians are concerned, and should not necessarily cast negative aspersions upon the quality of his work done during healthier times, or negate the real possibility such behavior manifested because Jones was enraptured and inscrutably high levels of consciousness. He would join the Roman Catholic Church in an attempt to transmute this world religion into one that accepts the law of Thelema and the formula of the Age of Horus. But was that an act of insanity or simply bold and audacious act of a Thelemic hero? Yes, he would be put away for flinging aside his raincoat to expose his nakedness to the masses of Vancouver. But are the naked sadhus of India imprisoned for indecency? It's easy for us, especially those of us whose initiatory careers place us conspicuously low on the tree of life, to point to these incidents and speculate how Achad's premature advance to Master of the Temple could have caused his ultimately fall into the madness of Doth, the false Sephirah, knowledge, which resides in the abyss itself. to become a black brother. In truth, very few people on the face of the earth are qualified to make that judgment. Certainly not I. Achad himself, however, gives us a chilling hint of his thoughts on the matter in a 1948 letter to Gerald York. Quote, "If this new aeon is what it seems to be, it will have lifted the curse of the magus and destroyed the glamour of lies and madness of the supernal paths. This would leave one in doth and represent real attainment and becoming one with those who know." Speculation and controversy aside, Frater Achad remains one of the most interesting and important magical figures of the 20th century. His initial Kabbalistic discoveries continue to yield new and provocative ideas concerning the Book of the Law and other holy books of Thelema. QBL, or The Bride's Reception, is a masterpiece of Kabbalah and controversy. Its importance to the world of modern occult literature can be measured not only by its value as a remarkably understandable textbook of the fundamental principles of Kabbalah, but also by the way it offers us a rare glimpse into the heart and mind of a brilliant and sincere seeker of wisdom and truth. And that's my introduction to this. Long ago, I wrote a poem. I wrote a limerick, and of course, limericks are. Please don't take limericks seriously. But I wrote a Frater Achad limerick, and with your permission, or even without it, I'll tell you my limerick to close today's talk, if I can remember it. Frater Achad seemed a man you could trust. Crossed the abyss without much of a fuss. But then went for a ride, cast illusion aside by exposing himself on the bus. Oh, that's so disrespectful. Anyway, see you tomorrow for Sunday school. Well, I'll try to be more, give my talk with more decorum tomorrow. See you tomorrow. Continue to be good to yourself and be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will.